Thanks for tuning in to another show in the Next Reel family of film podcasts.
Want to skip those ads and get early access?
Become a member at truestory.fm/join and discover all the other great perks that come with it. Welcome to Movies We Like, part of the Next Reel family of shows on True Story FM. I'm Andy Nelson, and that over there is Pete Wright.
It is lurking Pete Wright.
On today's episode, we have invited costume designer Jenny Beavan to talk about Luchino Visconti's The Leopard, a movie she likes. Jenny is a 3-time Oscar winner known for period work like A Room with a View and Gosford Park, and bold swings like Mad Max Fury Road and Cruella. Jenny, welcome to Movies We Like. We're thrilled to have you.
Thank you very much. I'm very honored to be here.
Oh my God, A Room with a View. I had such a crush on that movie when I was young. I mean, a huge crush on that movie. It is luscious. I loved it. I love you. Thank you for being here.
Stop now. No pressure. Come on.
I still just love saying, Mr. Beeb. It's still one of my absolute favorite things.
Oh, Mr. Beeb. Oh, my God. Yes, it was very special. It was very special. And it was the first one I think John and I did together as an actual partnership. I mean, I thought on The Bostonians he did more than was humanly possible. So we became co-designers of that. But Room with a View was the first one at the beginning of a huge partnership. And it was just one of those extraordinary films. And I think at the time we didn't think it never occurred to us it would be that successful. But I think like a lot of things, it just needed a movie like that at that time. I don't know what else was around, but obviously they weren't hitting the mark or whatever. And you just needed some really good story with a really interesting love, whatever going on. And it was amazing. I mean, I'm terribly proud of it still. And people do say, there's a wonderful woman in Tokyo said, but I feel a bit depressed. I put on Room with a View. And I'm thinking, well, if you make people happy, that's a brilliant thing to do in your career.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
Very true. Very true.
For sure.
I want to talk a little bit about you getting started, and especially because Merchant Ivory ties into that so much. And you mentioned John Wright, you're the kind of mentor who you ended up working with. Talk about how all of that started, and especially, and I'm curious, as you talk about that, how early period kind of taught you about costume design and how to work on a set and everything.
Well, in truth, I really want to be a theatre set designer. I had no ambition to be a film costume designer. And I went to the Central School of Art and Design, as it was called then, and studied with an amazing head of department, Ralph Coltire, who was top of his game in set design and very sculptural, very avant-garde. We're talking about the late 60s. But then by chance, I'd grown up with a boy called Nick Young, and he by chance got to know Merchant Ivory, and he ended up on a wonderful arts program called the South Bank Show, and he rang me and said they commissioned a film from Merchant Ivory, who he got to know through a friend. I think he was study mate at Westminster School. This was a film they were going to make in India, and it involved Dame Peggy Ashcroft, who was a phenomenal theatre actor, mainly in those days. And she was 70, but she was, in the film, her character was an eccentric English art dealer travelling overland to India to try and buy or find a legendary collection of miniature paintings owned by a Maharaja in Rajasthan. Unbeknown to her, 2 other art dealers were after this, an American and an Indian, and they were all out to steal these paintings. So would I go to Dame Peggy Ashcroft and just help her put some clothes together? No money was mentioned, it was just her wardrobe and mine. Anyway, second visit to her, she said she was a little concerned about going to India on her own at 70. She'd be given a first-class ticket. If she changed it for 2 economies, would I go with her? So I pitch up in Jodhpur, Rajasthan, and they're mildly surprised to see me. Those were days before, telephone communication was ghastly with India. You could hardly hear anything. There wasn't even telex, we were way before that. Anyway, they realised I could be quite useful. So I did not only looked after Dame Peggy, her costumes, and anyone else's costumes, I looked after her wig, I looked after her. I did crowd collecting, I did props, I did anything they needed. And acted in the film because the actress who was supposed to come up from Bombay, as it was then called, couldn't make it. So I just became part of the Merchant Ivory family, and they thought I was a costume designer and promptly gave me work. And without anything on my part, I moved sideways from set design in theatre, opera, and ballet, which was my world, into costume design in film. And to be honest, I would still love to do theatre, and I've done a bit of theatre costumes, with various people over the years, but not a huge amount. But I have stayed within the theatre bounds. But I'm a storyteller, so I don't mind where I tell the stories, or as long as the medium I understand, which I understand clothes and I understand sets, and I just storytell. So that's how it happened. Certainly nothing I'm doing.
Yeah. That's amazing.
It's a delightful fake it till you make it story. And it sounds like you didn't even really have to fake it that much. Just show up and be artful.
Well, just be helpful. I think the thing that people don't really understand in costume and in the film industry now, they all do these courses at very, very good film schools, but they all come out thinking they are a costume designer, a set production designer, whatever. Basically, I think you have to learn every skill as you work your way up. So you should do dressing, you should do aging and dyeing, you should do pattern cutting, you should do making of all sorts, because you never know. It might, buying, very important area, you might within that be happier, because what I do is a massive amount of negotiation with producers and directors, as well as my creative job. And also you have to be really good at, it's almost like you're conducting the orchestra. So I have a lot of ideas along with my assistants, but I have all these sections like the first violins, the cutters, the chief cutter, and the second violins, whoever. And I'm just basically holding it, pushing out the ideas and then conducting. And if I don't like the way they're playing, I have to adjust it. But it's about people skills. So the grander you are, and the sort of more snobby, the worse it'll be. The best thing is to just go in learning everything and then work your way up. And you may find you're brilliant at it, no question. But equally, you may find on the way, you don't really want to be head banana. You actually are very happy,
True.
doing something incredibly creative within the department, because everybody who works for me brings extraordinary things and helps me make me who I am.
Yeah, a lot of skill, talent, a lot of, just know-how in all of those different roles.
Absolutely. I mean, I can do most things, but nothing like as well as, of course, but if you understand how it's done, then you won't ask for something ridiculous. You won't ask someone to tailor a suit in a slurpy, silky velvet. It will be difficult, and it probably won't look that great, and it'll fall out of shape. And I mean, just simple things like that.
Well, I'm curious, moving back from working with your team to more like when working with coming into a project, when you first come into a project, you've had such a variety from the period pieces to the fantastical projects that you've worked on. Do you find that there's still a through line as to how you approach each job, whether it's period or fantasy or just present day?
It's always the same. Read the script, do the breakdown, which is what teaches you. I go through the script, put endless post-it notes, and write notes, which means I learn it. I also normally see it in my mind. I mean, some scripts are much harder to see than others, but I normally get a pretty instinctive reaction to a script.
Yeah.
And then I guess it's sort of, the post-apocalypse. The thing about Fury Road was George Miller is an auteur. He sees it, he conceives it, he writes it, he probably does drawings for it. I mean, we are working to George's ideas, and yes, we put a lot of ourselves into it, a bit like I'm saying with my crew, but he's got an incredibly clear idea of where he's going with it. So it's not as difficult as you would think. And also he has a wonderful set of rules about the wasteland and what you can find in the wasteland and how you repurpose. And, they're all desperate for water and food. And there's that sort of famine mentality, and they become almost savage in their need for stuff, which you can see happening all the time in our current world, I fear.
Sure, yeah.
So that's actually incredibly easy in a weird way to get into his mind and understand how it works in the wasteland. And then Furiosa was obviously a little bit earlier, so we had a little bit more freedom with what they might have and what would still... But things like leather, it lasts for years. You've got certain things that will not disintegrate, even though it's presumably been blasted by a nuclear bomb. We never know. We presume.
Right. Yeah, right.
It's such an interesting breadth of work that I'm perseverating on one comment that you just made, that you can see the work. And then I look at your filmography, which is, in a word, extraordinary. Just cherry picking: The King's Speech, Child 44, Life, We're Going to Space, obviously the Mad Max films, Cruella. These are some extraordinary bits of fruit I'm pulling off the tree, and I just need to know how your brain works to be able to see those and be able to visualize the universe with such apparent affinity. And yet I look at those films, I would never in a million years be able to imagine that the same person had costumed them.
That's a real compliment, because I do not want to put myself into my work. I want it to be correct and appropriate to each project. But I think, I don't know, I'm incredibly instinctive. I'm not very clever. I'm not academic. I read things and I sort of see the world for some reason. And I don't know why that happens. I mean, I think I'm just lucky. I can't do many things. I'm not a hopeless cook, and I play the cello unbelievably badly. But I mean, I'm a storyteller. So I think that's what guides me. I'm not interested in clothes as such until I tell stories with them. Then I'll happily go any direction with clothes, including fashion, which is one of my least favorite things, in terms of what I do in my normal life. I absolutely love ceramics and early painting and, curiously, religious icons, although you've never met anyone less religious than me.
So funny. Have you ever, let me ask it this way, have you ever met a project that you said no to because you couldn't see it?
Very rarely. I can't think of one offhand. I've certainly said no to things I thought were stupidly violent or, just didn't appeal. But in the early days, I had to take every job. I'm a single parent. I was living in southeast London. She had to go to a private school. There were nowadays, they're terrific state schools, but I had to earn a reasonable amount of money. I had to pay for childcare because the hours I do. So I took a lot of jobs probably I wouldn't have normally wanted to, and then ended up really enjoying them because they weren't quite what I'd anticipated.
Sure.
But I don't think there's anything I've had to work to find. Sometimes it's like climbing Everest, and you see it, but then it's not easy. And often, although I sort of see it, I then think, oh my God, I've no idea what I'm doing here. Help. And then halfway through the film, you think, why did I ever think that?
Yeah.
Actually, I do know what I'm doing. But I think if you don't think like that, it wouldn't be as good. Hopefully. I think that self-doubt is very important. And what you do wrong, you learn far more from. When you're doing a fitting and you put the wrong thing on someone, you learn more from it than when it's right. You just have to be calm about it and just keep going and work a bit harder. If sometimes I just find I sit there and I just make more notes, and that helps, clear your brain. But
well, and I think what you said that I have latched onto is that costume design, just like every other part of filmmaking, really is fundamentally about telling a story. Like, that's your job, just like everyone
absolutely.
else.
Yeah. Hopefully we're all telling the same story. And that's when it works so brilliantly, particularly with things like Merchant Ivory. because Jim just brought us all together. We had never had any doubt about where we were going with the project. I mean, for me, he's one of the greatest filmmakers. And they've been remastering quite a lot of the films. And sometimes John and I have done Q&As. So we've seen the film on a huge screen, looking, and you just think, how did we do that? Because we used to do it with minimal crews. I mean, I remember dressing Vanessa Redgrave in the ladies' lavatories at the Wigmore Hall. I mean, never had facilities or anything. Once I'd designed it, I was part of the dressing team.
Yeah,
undressed
right.
and dressed all the extras on Room with a View in Florence with one assistant, Elena Politi,
oh, wow.
who didn't speak English, and my Italian was terrible. So,
well, looking back, since you're kind of talking about all these different films, I am curious, especially since you just received the Costume Designers Guild Career Achievement Award.
That was amazing.
Which is fantastic. Congratulations.
Yes.
But with the career that you have had, when you think back across your whole body of work, what does that arc feel like from the inside when you're looking at all of that you've accomplished?
Are you one to be racked with nostalgia?
Yeah, I love a bit of nostalgia. Don't you worry, I'm not going to be racked. I feel incredibly lucky. I mean, what did I do right in a former life? Because I had amazing parents. We didn't have a lot of money. Both my parents were classical musicians working in orchestras. I was brought up with music. A very alternative outlook on life. We went to very alternative schools and had, a lot of real creative stuff going on at home. No television, so we made things all the time. And, so that was a blessing. And then meeting Nick Young, who got me into the merchant ivory scene. I mean, how lucky was that? Both our parents, mine and his, sent us to this very esoteric music and movement class, not normal ballet for us.
Yeah.
And Nick and I became good friends, and his sister Sarah and my sister Sarah Hill. And, and that was just an incredible thing that he then met Richard McCrory, who knew merchant ivory, How did that happen? And then by my other route, I got into the Central School of Art and Design and worked with Ralph Koltai and had an extraordinary time doing ballet and opera and all sorts of wonderful theatre. And then the choice of the movies I've worked on, the directors I've worked with, how did that happen? I mean, the luck, and I've done Disney projects, but I've never had to do a real, what they call them, a real life thing from an animation, which I've always done origin stories with Disney, and they've always been interesting. And I mean, apart from a slight glitch on Cruella, they were, they've been great. And I don't know. And now working with Alex Garland, I'm just blessed. And the last thing I did was with Nick Hytner. My God, what an amazing, I mean, the luck is just ludicrous.
We should talk about the Choral a bit, since that's the project you just worked on most recently. This is a project, a film that's set in 1916 and in a kind of a small mill town in England. As World War I is going on and people are coming and going from the war. And, I'm curious because it is such a different feel from aristocracy, like in something like A Room with a View or any of these other kind of merchant ivory films. This is very ordinary townspeople. Do you find you approach things differently when you jump into period research, when it's like mill workers versus people of like the aristocrats?
Yeah, I mean, you just research that area of life, and it's an amazing script by Alan Bennett, who's one of our national treasures and one of the greatest writers on earth. But he comes from that area. His father was a butcher in Yorkshire. He knows those people, and he wrote this beautiful script, which is anti-war, anti-discrimination, and so powerful without being over the top. It's very laid back and has the most wonderful music in it, which is very dear to my heart. Anything with music, and I'm there. But I mean, it's very easy to research because in 1916 there were quite a lot of photographs, and there was even cine footage of mill workers coming out of the mill from even earlier. So that wasn't a problem. And the other wonderful thing was, We had an incredibly small budget. I mean, we made that film on £8 million,
Ooh,
which is, probably less than the catering budget on Furiosa. But in 1916, in a mill town in Yorkshire, nobody had many clothes. So legitimately, I could give it truth, but actually everyone only had 2 outfits.
Yeah, that helps. Yeah,
it helps in every way. And I did say to Alan Bennett, I said, because I met him when he came up to watch some filming, I said, it's so brilliant that you wrote it then. He said, oh yes, he said, my father was a butcher and he had 2 suits. One was my suit and the other was my other suit. And I just thought, it's the most beautiful story ever. And, and so it was completely right to do it like that. And of course, I worked out of Cosprop, John's company in North London. And of course, they had the perfect, and we had to make a little bit because we used a real amateur choral society in Yorkshire to fill in our actors and people are bigger now, and we just ran out of stock. So we made some very simple dresses, which we accessorized, but that was it. Other than that, it was just Cosprop. And all the men's suits, raid suit, they're all just stock suits, but their stock is so wonderful. You can find gems in it. And of course, it's not new. It doesn't look brand new, and it's worn and it's got a life and it's perfect for that. So I was fantastically proud of it. But I also think it's a beautiful film.
It feels like the perfect prequel for Swing Kids. Right?
Swing Kids.
Another movie with young people in nice suits and a lot of music, and it's just a little bit later in history.
Yes, just a little bit later. 37, 38? It's just pre-39, I think we were. Yeah. In Prague. My first film in Prague. Oh, God, I love Prague. It's a wonderful city. Wonderful to work into.
Oh, my goodness.
Well, I imagine that's a part of any of these projects where you're traveling and filming in different parts of the world and finding things that fit that. And even I imagine for a story that takes place in this mill town, just finding things that feel like they fit, right? That feels like it's of this world. I was really taken by Ralph Fiennes' suit because it just felt like it was part of him. Like it seemed so right for him,
Again, I think somebody looks after me above. I'm not religious, as I said, but somebody, because that suit was there. And every time I looked at it, and then Ross, who does the men's stuff there, said, I think it'll fit Rafe. And of course it did. It also had although it's an English suit, goodness knows, I think it's a real one, but it could have been made in Germany. It just could have been. So he's come from Germany. You assume he's probably bought some clothes there because he was successful there. And then again, the hat, although it's not anything stupid with, feathers in it and all that, like Tyrolean, it still could have been made in Germany. Rafe, he wears things very well too. He just adopts them.
Yes.
I mean, it's wonderful. He is wonderful.
Do it makes me think of other movies where he dresses suits well. I immediately think, how is it that you have escaped being roped into doing a Bond film with your career? The only thing on your IMDb that is Bond related is a Nokia commercial. How is that?
Oh yes. I was suddenly asked to do that with that lovely actress whose name completely escapes me. Anyway, yes, I've absolutely no idea why I was suddenly asked to do that, but I was. And I don't know if it ever came up.
Lashana Lynch, is that who you're talking about? The actress?
Yeah. Yes, that's the one. Yeah, absolutely. I've no idea if the movie thing ever came out, but it was quite fun.
So funny to me.
I mean, I've done all sorts of, I did the British Airways safety video. If you've done on British Airways, you'll see, people putting on safety harnesses and all that, wearing full period costume. I think it's hilarious. It's one of the most fun jobs ever with Sharon Maguire.
Oh man, that is fantastic.
It was hilarious. No, honestly.
That is hilarious.
As I said, I've been incredibly lucky. I've twice met Sam Mendes for Bond, and he's twice decided I'm not the right person. I'm actually quite grateful, but he's always sent me the most lovely handwritten note. And I just thought, I think Bond's, there's the problem with films like that and Star Wars and things like that. There's so much producer interest. I won't say interference, but interest in them. And I don't think it's very easy. And you have a huge amount of product placement in a Bond, and actually I enjoy watching a Bond, but I don't think I enjoy doing it. I hope I do a good job, but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
So I'm very happy with certain films that haven't happened in my world, because I seem to have done and still be doing really, really interesting.
For sure.
Possibly smaller scale, but the one I'm doing at the moment is huge. But
well, let's shift gears and talk a little bit about The Leopard. This is Visconti's film, and it's a very fascinating film that is about the period in Italy when things are shifting as far as like the Risorgimento, or I'm trying to think of the Italian word.
Yes.
Yeah. And as everything is changing, and I think it's just a lush film, beautiful performances and the way it captures. And I'm curious for you, kind of, where did this film enter your life, and like what made it something that really meant something to you?
My feeling is a long time ago, so I'm not 100% certain on dates and things, is that it was about... So it was made in 1962 and was being talked about. And I went to college in the late 60s. And my memory is that actually a group of us from college went together to see it in a screening cinema in Soho, because it was on, and it was one of the things we all went to see, those weird, wonderful Czech and Polish films, because it was sort of... But I think we all went to see The Leopard at that point. And it was just astonishingly beautiful as a film, and fascinating with the politics, and which I didn't really understand to this day. I still have to sort of look up what was going on. It's not a period of history any of us know. We don't study it. So it was very different to anything else I'd ever seen. But also, I think I then probably saw it again later on, and John Wright, my mentor and dear friend, was always talking about it with the fact that Piero Tosi, who did the costumes, was only 36. And in the 60s, it was often, when you saw period things, particularly if they were made in England, they looked very 1960s. The fabrics were nylon. There weren't wonderful, true fabrics around. There wasn't silks and all the interesting things we actually have now, far, far more. And so if you look at particularly English BBC television, the Forsyte Saga or something in there, I think that was black and white, it's still got a very modern look, and they have very modern makeup and hard hair, and, it was great. And then you saw something like this, and yes, there was a little bit too much eye makeup probably for 1860, but it's still astonishing in its truth and the beauty of the fabrics he used and the absolutely accurate period cut. He was obsessive, Piero Tosi. I don't think he was happy because it was never perfect enough, but he was one of the most incredible costume designers ever. And again, his range is pretty enormous. I don't think he did post-apocalypse, but, he certainly covered a massive thing from very, very poor Italy to Medea, and just, great range, and loads of Verdi operas. And I think if you ask most costume designers who their sort of hero is, it will be Piero Tosi. So that was a huge thing for me in the film.
There is no shortage of sweat, I did notice. And
good makeup. I think it was probably pretty hot when they were shooting,
Yeah. It's so hot. They clearly worked it into the story. It was hot where they were, and it was fundamentally challenging. It is such an interesting thing, because you're right. It is a movie of extraordinary beauty, and the costumes, the number of costumes,
amazing number. And they would have all been real. They wouldn't have CGI'd. They wouldn't have done crowd enhancement then. They really dressed all those people, and they really had them out on the set.
Yeah, extraordinary. And in the period of existing sort of between, it feels like this, I don't know, like they're calling on this sort of Victorian, like European style. And yet we're at the end of that period, right? We're about to not be wearing those kinds of dresses so much anymore.
No, we are. 60s was the huge crinoline, and then it collapses down into the 70s, and then up at the back in the 80s, and then down again in the 90s. I mean, there's always a flow in space, but it was still very excessive clothing. But the 1860s is the huge crinoline, because you've come out from the 50s. Obviously, you've come up from the very Regency and then into the sort of Jane Austen-y narrow, and then it starts to go out, and then the shoulders go out, and then it goes, I mean, it's always a great flow if you look at...
Well, it is so much easier to see and hear when you talk about it in terms of women. But what about the men? There were some interesting things going on with the clothes with the men. Some of them are just, you look at, there's a dude in a suit. But there's such a wide swath of what we see in terms of regalia, because there's a lot of dudes in military suits.
Oh, yes, you've got all the red jackets with Garibaldi.
Yeah.
And all the, Well, that's just what they wore. I mean, that's not terribly difficult to research. What was amazing was the amount. Did they make them? I don't know. I mean, they're probably still in Peruzzi or Rancati. No, not Rancati. They've been probably in Peruzzi if anyone's got them. Possibly Torelli. Torelli may have them.
You think these suits are still hanging around somewhere?
Well, it's only the 60s. I mean, we're not even 60-something, only 60 years ago. They'll still be somewhere. And they do look after them in Italy. They're probably in Torelli, because Piero Tosi was part of Torelli. And I think Torelli made most of it.
Fascinating.
And that's how we do it, is like, for me, Cornejo and Perez have bought all the medieval films that were made in Spain, because they have much cheaper warehousing outside of Madrid. So you go about 40 miles or so outside of Madrid to these incredibly dull industrial estates, and within these huge warehouses are masses of costumes. We can't do that in England. We don't have the space. We couldn't afford it. And they're like €4 a square meter, and we're like €40 a square meter. I mean, it's massively different. And it's expensive enough, period costume, anyhow. You have to maintain it, you have to look after it. And also, they found more costume houses in Italy, and they're just about still keeping going, because all the theatres and opera houses didn't have their own wardrobes. They rented or got stuff from the various costume houses rather than make it in-house. So there are big stocks abroad, more than we have here in England. Cosprop's the place for things like the Choral or Merchant Ivory. Brilliant, from about 1750 to about 1950. That's their really strong. So
that's their range,
masses of these period films we all love come from there, even if they're made in America.
Interesting.
You all come to us, which is wonderful. But I think with the Leopard, he would have just looked into the peasant characters and it's like storytelling. I mean, he was a consummate storyteller. So the mayor and everyone, slightly pompous, and he'll have just found the right look for them. And there may be sort of things you can see in painting and that spark your imagination.
Well, and I definitely feel that with like Claudia Cardinale's, like when we first meet her, right? Like she comes in and she's in that white lace ball gown when we first meet her, which, I don't know. I guess now you have me on this thing about like how it's all about storytelling, because I think that that's an outfit that is doing some psychological work as far as it's her mark into this aristocratic society, but also she's kind of this interloper coming into it. And I think that that's an interesting element that we're getting, because that ties so much into what you're just talking about like how it's all about the storytelling.
Well, that's, I think, when it works. I mean, there are certain films like Cruella. It'd be a shame if people didn't notice the costumes. It's about costumes and fashion.
That's her job, right? Exactly.
Like the Leopard, although it's an incredibly beautiful period. So, you're going to make people look incredibly beautiful in those clothes. But also, what's so clever with what he did was they're phenomenal costumes, but you still look at the actor. Whereas for me, it doesn't work, is when you can see a consciousness in the design And somehow the designer's in there going, look at what I can do. This is my mark. And you think, do you know what I mean? But some things need, Priscilla, Queen of the Desert would be very disappointing, but it didn't look amazing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, great. For sure.
And actually, Paul Taswell's work on Wicked, and it's so extraordinary, so detailed, makes me almost exhausted, but he's such a dear. And, there's stunning ideas and stuff in there. It's so, and very appropriate because it's a musical, basically. I don't know if I'd be able to do that as well as, I certainly wouldn't do it as well as Paul does it. He's just incredible. And then Kate Hawley, who just won the BAFTA, brilliant work on Frankenstein. Again, it's not period accurate, but it's period sensitive. And I just think she did beautiful stuff on it. I was absolutely, really, really impressed with her. Very interesting, very different look at it. And I'm thinking, I'm not sure I'd be able to do that. But I probably would, because you'd be given the right instruction by the director. But, even so, it's like, wow, that's amazing.
That's an interesting thing that I don't think I've actually heard anyone say. It's not necessarily period accurate, but it's period sensitive. Yeah. And I think that's a great way of describing all of these different projects, because I think that you're obviously tapping into that too, even in something like Cruella, which is a period. It's a period film, right? And so you're reaching back to a period of time, but you're also expanding and playing.
Yeah, exactly, because that's the character of Cruella and that's the nature of the story. And, you're working her towards Glenn Close at some moment, that's where she's going to be. It's, you just do what's appropriate for the film. And yes, it wasn't, I remember the 70s pretty well, actually. I'm terrified to say. It was a fascinating period, very interesting clothes. I was quite interested in clothes in those days, and used to go to Bieber, and I could never quite afford it, but I used to look longingly at stuff, and there was this wonderful, it was a very innovative period in some ways, but it just felt right for the film, the way we did it. And she's a wannabe fashion designer. She does her own clothes. She's jolly good at making and designing, and a little bit punky, a little bit, edgy. And that's how she developed. And then the Baroness was a hoot, because you just knew she was slightly outdated and slightly beyond her sell-by date. But it was Emma Thompson. We found this sort of asymmetric thing, and that just became her style. And it was sort of almost luck. Threw something at the stand and it landed asymmetrically. And then off we went, That was Emma.
That's amazing, like finding a little clue like that.
Yeah, you find clues, and you have to be open to everything.
Yeah.
It's a funny little observation that in a movie like Cruella, you're looking at performances, costuming that has to live up to the scale of the performance, right? And those performances are very big. And I look at the Leopard, and I look at Lancaster could have been one of those as the prince, right? He could have been one of those over the top. And yet I think he plays it as reserved as he is outfitted to be. At no point does it feel like he's a pretender.
No, it's very true, isn't it? And there's a kindness, because it's such an interesting role. And the fact that he sees what's happening, but he can't quite give into it because he's so tied into his world and his aristocracy and what he feels is right. I think it's amazing. I truly haven't seen it for so long, and it's really making me want to. I just haven't had time to re-look at it. So I'm not really I don't know why. It was just one of the films I chose, and you lot chose that one as the one I talk about. And it's like, ooh. Because, yes, the costumes, no question. But in general, I can't even be specific about them. Were just extraordinary and true and much realer than anything I'd seen in the cinema or on television in that period. And the idea it was made in 1962 and then shown in 63 is so bizarre when you look at the beauty of the production design, because in England it was still all painted sets, and it hadn't got that amazing reality and
the scope too, because like that the entire like last hour almost of the movie.
45 minutes in the ballroom, yeah.
The ballroom. I mean, you've got 400 costumes in there with all these extras, so many people, and it's all like as authentic as you could get because that was what Visconti wanted. And so you just feel like you're living in that space, and I think that's the key is whether it's Cruella or the Leopard is finding the pieces that make it feel authentic to the story that we're telling. Because I bought this entire world. It's just everything is so real.
Even the sweat, especially the sweat.
The
Good
sweat,
God.
Yeah. Probably shouldn't talk about sweat too much. Perspire.
It is. I'm sorry that you're right.
Glowing,
inelegant.
I believe is what women do.
I will say that last part is. In terms of a film, at just over 3 hours, it is that last bit is an untidy segment in terms of pacing. I found it a little breathless in its overall pacing.
Yeah,
beautiful, fascinating period of history, and my God, it is very long for the story it wants to tell.
Oh, it is very long. No, I know. I mean, that's my problem with films at the moment, which I love the Choral because it's much shorter, but. And, when you're working in the industry, we do very long days. And I just can't watch film at the moment. I've watched crap television. Celebrity Antiques Road Trip is a particular favourite, because I don't have to think.
Yeah,
and I do
yeah, you get to turn it off.
And I go to the theatre if I can, or concerts. But I just can't be doing with these 2.5 films, 2.5 hour films, which are all fine. And I'm sure they're very good, a lot of them, but at the moment, I'll work and they can.
There will be a time for
point.
cinematic reflection.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll catch up, but at the moment, it's all a bit much.
Well, I mean, it's been wonderful chatting with you about you, your career, the Choral, the Leopard, all of these different things. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, the Choral is very dear to my heart, and I tried to promote it to my best ability because, in truth, Sonny didn't do a lot and didn't send out screeners to the people who, and you couldn't get it in India or in Australia, So it's really weird. They just didn't bother with us, and yet, to me, Ray Fiennes is better than I've ever seen him. I just think he's wonderful.
It is so bizarre that it took us scheduling you for this show for me to realize that movie existed.
I mean, I know we made it on no money, and they obviously didn't have money to distribute it. And I think maybe Sony had other films they thought it might interfere with, like, the thing with Ethan Hawke. Sounds rather good, Blue Moon.
Blue Moon, yeah.
So, yes, of course. But it is a beautiful film. And it's not perfect, but the amount of people I know who've seen it more than once because they really loved it. But again, in England, it was around more. It was in cinemas, and some cinemas it's still showing.
Well, I'll say, like, I hadn't heard that piece by Elgar before, but it like pulled me right in. Like, that music was just so beautiful, and like when you have the nurse and the soldier singing, it just really, really gets you.
I think Nick just felt, if we just did it, he wanted a little bit extra. But what was extraordinary is when I first knew it was Dream of Gerontius, I tried to listen to it, and I thought it was the most boring thing I'd ever heard, because it goes on and on before you get to that bit.
Yeah.
And then more recently, I was sort of fiddling around on YouTube, one of my faves, and I found a recording made in 1968 in Coventry Cathedral with Sir Adrian Boult conducting, Peter Pears, who was an amazing tenor, Benjamin Britten's partner, Janet Baker and John Shelley Quack, all of whom I heard when my father was a cellist in the Philharmonia, and they all sang in things like St. Matthew Passion, So I knew all of them, and I thought, I'll just give it a go. Oh my God, it's brilliant. And Peter Pears, with quite a reedy tenor voice, is so perfect as Gerontius. I've become completely obsessed. So it's now my sort of go-to on YouTube.
Well, I'll have to look for that version and include it in the show notes so that people can check it out. Because
it's 1968. Adrian Boult, Coventry Cathedral, and Peter Pears is Gerontius. It's for me, it's perfect.
Wow.
So now awesome. I'm absolutely addicted. But yes, do promote it, because it'd be lovely if, everything that's going on at the moment. It's all in there. And awful discrimination. And of course, it was all totally under par. But the very subtle way Alan Bennett writes, and it's not in your face. It's not flung at you. It's just, this is how it is.
Yeah, right. Well, we appreciate you for coming here chatting about all of this stuff. Do you have, you're on Instagram, right?
I am.
Do people? Okay. That's a place people can go find you and check out what you're up to?
Yeah. Jenny Beavan Designs. I do it, but my sister actually posts it because she's a graphic designer. So she sort of says, I think we should do them in this order and let's do this, and variously puts on slogans or whatever, or this works the montage journal, so she does it, but I write it and I do it. And I haven't had anything recently other than the choral, and then odd things like this actually would be quite fun to pop on Instagram. If you want to send me, I could take a photo of myself. It's quite hilarious. Oh,
perfect.
Oh, that's lovely. Oh, look, here we are. Hi guys. Yeah, but she's great. And sometimes I've got other obsessions like gardening, and the foxes in my garden and my daft cat, and but
they pop in there from time to time. Yeah,
things I eat, I always find that a bit odd. But people put on a nice cup of coffee and think whatever. But particularly in the garden. But at the moment it's so wet here. Oh, are you? No, you're in LA, aren't you?
No,
I'm in Arizona and Pete's in Oregon. So
Oh, Oregon. Right. Yeah. I was just thinking, because New York's really getting it at the moment, isn't it?
Yes.
Oh my goodness,
getting
yes.
Blasted.
Yeah. I've got a friend here who's supposed to go back on Wednesday. I don't think he probably will. So
good luck.
Yeah. I wouldn't want to fly in that kind of snow.
No,
it's not
daunting.
A wise
trains aren't even running, so I can't imagine the planes are landing.
Cars, haven't they? So they're keeping the roads clear
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Quite something, isn't it?
Well, this has been an absolute delight, Jenny. Seriously, our great honor.
I've really loved it. It is an amazing film and should be seen.
If you loved hearing Jenny talk about the Leopard and what it means when costumes disappear into a world so completely that you forget someone designed them, here are 4 great next clicks. First, Jenny won her second Oscar for Mad Max Fury Road and returned to that world with Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, 2 films that couldn't be further from 1860s Sicily, and yet the same storytelling instincts are all over both. Over on the next reel, we covered the entire Mad Max series, and the Film Board reviewed Furiosa when it came out. Links to both in the show notes. Second, right here on Movies We Like, our conversation with Academy Award-winning costume designer Deborah L. Scott on The Mission, another period film where the costumes had to carry enormous historical and moral weight, and where the craft is every bit as invisible and essential as what Piero Tosi achieved. And finally, also here on Movies We Like, costume designer Alana Mooreshead on Never Let Me Go, a quieter film where what characters wear says everything about who they are and what they've lost, right in the spirit of what Jenny was describing. We'll drop links to all of those in the show notes. Thanks again to Jenny for joining us today. For everyone out there, we hope you enjoyed the show, and certainly hope you like the movie like we do here on Movies We Like. Movies We Like is part of the True Story FM network and part of the Next Reel family of film shows. Our theme is Chongclap by Out of Flux. Find us at truestory.fm and follow @TheNextReel on Blue Sky, Instagram, and Letterboxd. If you'd like to learn about becoming a member to the Next Reel family of film shows, visit truestory.fm/join. If you're enjoying the show, we'd love your rating and review wherever you listen. See you next time.
Hi, this is Tony Meaches.
Hi, and this is John Matthews.
And we are the co-hosts of the podcast Imprintcast, the podcast dedicated to the Australian boutique label Imprint Films.
Yes, if you want to know everything related to imprint or in the imprint world, this is the podcast for you as we cover announcements and also upcoming releases from the imprint lineup.
Yes, and we are not the only hosts on this show. We also have family members. They include Suzanne Boleyn, Paul Berryman, Jim Mulvihill, as well as Ryan Kendall.
Also joining us are content creators who contribute to the imprint releases, doing commentaries, essays. They're actually on the show discussing the releases they worked on via deep dive episodes covering various titles.
You can also watch our videos on certain episodes with the content creators as well as us, as well as the family members. And of course, you can always listen to this podcast wherever you listen to your podcast, and our YouTube channel, Imprintcast.
And don't forget, Imprintcast is a part of Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network.